and welcome back to another episode of There's Danger Here. I'm Leilani,
And I'm Sam.
and today we're having another different type of episode. It's
Okay.
not about people murder.
Oh, interesting.
You'll know as soon as we
Oh.
start talking about it. I told you it was coming.
I actually think I already know because I've been literally thinking about this.
Have you?
Yeah. I'm
You're
really excited about this one.
like, get to this. We've talked about it before.
This is something that I just lives in space that I have let stay in my head
For far too long.
forever, and it
Yeah.
will stay there forever.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into it. On April 23rd, 1897, on a farm in Kansas, a farmer went to the papers claiming that an airship was slowly descending. 2 men, a woman, and 3 children occupied the craft and at one point go out and spoke in a way the farmer couldn't understand. Then, as they take off, the farmer heard a calf crying.
I hope everyone has goosebumps right now.
Already.
This is so perfect for this time and place in Oregon, I feel like.
Yes. So heard the calf crying and went to see a cow with a cable around its neck. The aircraft lifted and took off with the cow.
Oh my God. I actually hadn't heard that story ever.
Yeah, I found a few that I hadn't heard before.
Yeah.
In the summer of 1947 in Montana, 8-year-old Rod Skenendor, maybe, and a group of children at the Cut Bank boarding school found a dead cow. The cow had a 4-inch round hole cut on the side of it. Additionally, its eyes, tongue, and other parts were removed. An older guy, Manny, walked up and talked to the children about their elders seeing sky people. Before guns and the increased presence of humans, they used to visit much more often. There were different kinds of visitors, some small and some tall. Ones that looked like humans with black or blonde hair, and feasts would be held when the tall ones visited. Many times they would take cows or cut parts of them out, leaving no blood behind.
That's so wild. When was the first one?
1897.
I can't imagine there was a bunch of reports of flying
Saucers,
crafts.
yeah, at the time. I can't either.
Yeah.
In 1967, the case of Snippy occurred in San Luis County. A horse killed and mutilated, skinned from the mid-neck up to the bone. The horse looked as if it was prancing in circles, then lifted and dropped almost 50 feet away from the way that the tracks were.
Uh-huh.
In 1973, 14 states reported mutilation cases.
All the same year,
hmm
around the same time or
It doesn't say, it just says throughout the
that
year.
year?
New Mexico had hundreds of cases from 1973 to 1979. 10,000 cases all across the U.S. since that time. These are some of the reported cases in which most times the jaw was cut, blood missing, not found at all,
Right.
not just seeped into the ground,
Right.
not
It's
like they had bled out. It was
gone.
gone.
Yeah.
Tongue cut out and genitalia popped out of the skin, ears or eyes missing, and scavengers tend not to touch the animals.
Right.
No tracks are found near the animal. Unclear etiology for how the cattle are killed. No bullet holes. Some of the animals appear to have been dropped. Clamp marks, ribs broken off of the spinal column. And sometimes they are on top of fences or fence posts.
Whoa. I actually didn't know
Any
that
of that?
either.
I love bringing stuff that I know you won't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes they are miles away from the ranches that they should be at. And so let's talk about some of these specific cases. In Cascade County of Montana, the first cattle mutilations were reported on August 14, 1974, but it wasn't until the next year that things really began to ramp up in Montana. In late September 1974, oh God, I can never remember how to say this. Is it Sioux Falls? Sioux Falls? It's
Sioux Falls.
Sioux. Thank you. Why I can't. I was thinking it was like a longer name and it broke my brain for a second. South Dakota reported a few cattle mutilations. In one case, a black Angus heifer's tongue and reproductive organs were removed. The organs were pulled through a perfectly circular hole bored into the animal. The right ear was excised from the skull. No blood or tracks were found around the animal. And in another case, a bull calf had their internal organs removed along with the tongue, left ear, and testicles.
It's so, like, I don't know if you get into the theories of, like, what could be doing this, but to me, it seems like, so some of the theories I have heard, and you might breach into this, is that there's, like, Native American cultures who once were able to, like, kill and, like, drain blood from animals and very, like, religious practices and
Mhm.
certain ways to, like, make it so there's no blood or no trauma around these animals. But to me, it seems like this is impossible.
It does feel impossible. And yeah, they do talk about it could be a cult. The first or the second, not the 1897, but the second one that we talk about, that was on a reservation that was indigenous peoples talking about
Yeah,
the cow. And Manny was, I don't remember his like full name, but he went by Manny, but he was talking about, his elders. So
right.
they made it sound like it
It
was not,
wasn't them.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it could be so many things. It's pretty crazy.
yeah.
But I like talking about what the heck is happening and why it's so wild.
It's really wild.
Yeah. On March 24th, 1975, um, Choto County, maybe? Again, worst with names, leave me alone. Found a large heifer lying at the bottom of a ravine. The rest of the herd was restless. In this case, unlike many of the others, there was blood and signs of struggle that were approximately 10 yards around the carcass. So this cow fought back.
Hmm.
They weren't having it. In which the blood was still warm and coming out of the cow. The udder bag was removed with a smooth incision, and the intestines were hanging out of the rectum. Other animal tracks were found 20 yards away, but wouldn't come up to the carcass. In fact, they never did. The carcass rotted instead of being picked off. Nearby, a newborn calf was mutilated with a tongue and one lip removed, but it was still alive.
Oh.
The calf belonged to the dead heifer.
Oh.
hmm After a search yielding nothing, so there was another calf belonging to the dead heifer was missing, and they also searched for that one, and the calf turned up 4 days later in the pasture. They said it was just gone. They had searched everywhere,
Everywhere.
and then they came out one morning and it was just standing there. And they're like, "That what?
It's impossible.
Yeah,
Right.
where did you come from?"
Yeah.
Um, and not likely to have been there the whole time because if it wasn't with the herd, then it's prey.
Right.
It's a calf. It would have been picked off by something.
Yeah. And I mean, I know there could be acres and acres and miles of
Mm-mm.
land, but still, they're confined.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually, if there's pastures, I feel like they have like fences that keep them in their area so
Right.
that they don't either wander into other mm, farmers or into the woods and
Right.
be
Right.
lost.
It's your
So,
cattle.
yeah.
They're money. They're your property. You don't just let them roam the mountains.
hmm
And then they don't just show back up.
Yeah. August of 1975 was a busy month. In Teton, a 12-day-old heifer calf, one that had been in good health according to the farmer, was found in an isolated area on a hillside about 50 yards from a pond. There were no visible tracks in the immediate area. In fact, none of the herd would even go near the calf. Postmortem showed that the calf had almost no blood. The vulva, rectum, and bladder had been removed, and a piece of the hide was removed that was 1 foot in diameter. And that's like a common theme that either the herd won't go near the animal and other animal like I said, predators won't go near it. So these carcasses don't get eaten. They just will slowly like rot back into the
Right.
fields. Which
Like,
is a very odd phenomena because usually predators smell
right, the meat, and
the
they go get it.
yeah.
Yeah. So I've also heard that there's like some of them don't even get like maggots
Yeah.
and they don't have flies that are like eating away at their flesh. They
Hmm.
just like
Slowly disintegrate.
very slowly disintegrate over time. And there's also like radioactive Geiger counters that like start to go off
Yeah.
around some of these cattle,
Yeah.
which is
Insane.
so crazy.
Hmm. The same night as the 12-day-old heifer calf was called in, two more were called in by a Fairfield area rancher. The calves were near a pond as well, and it appeared as though one of them had been dropped in the water and then dragged back out about 12 to 14 feet based on skid marks. This one was a Black Angus heifer and was about 4 months old. It had the vaginal and rectal areas removed. The tip of the left ear and tail were removed as well. The second calf was a Hereford heifer and was about 5 months old. It had a large diagonal incision under the left rib with the intestine protruding from the incision. Its reproductive organs and the tip of the left ear were removed. The two calves were 12 feet from each other. A neighbor said they saw a car drive through the herd a few nights earlier, and the owner said when he first found the calves, he saw the herd watering in an area they don't normally use. So around this time, a lot of these are called in around water. And
Hmm.
so the theory was that there was something
Living in the water.
living in the water that was doing this. And there's not like alien, like people talk about aliens, and one of the theories was that they had come to Earth, many time, like many millennia ago, and they were in the water, and so they were coming out.
Uh-huh.
That was one of the theories.
They have to eat like every 1,000 years. And
I don't know. But I mean, everything's wild, but it's just like you can't explain any of it, and it's insane that it's not. No science easily explains what's happening.
that's why it like lives in my brain, is
Yeah.
because there's no answer for it.
Hmm.
There's no clear, like, there's no cult anywhere that has made claims that they take genitalia of cattle.
Cows. Yeah.
Like, there's no, just knowing what a cow looks like, your brain goes, this thing is massive.
Hmm.
In order to kill it, you would have to really put up a fight. I don't care if it's 12 days old or 5 months old or an adult. Like, it doesn't
Hmm.
matter. You're fighting that thing to bring that thing down.
Hmm.
So when there's no, like, zero evidence of like a struggle, that also, like, that doesn't make any sense.
Hmm. And lots of people have tried to make sense of it.
Yeah.
On August 14th, 1975, a week later, Cascade County received two calls about cattle mutilations. The first was a bull calf found dead while the rancher was checking on the cattle. The calf was found 40 feet from the stock tank. Again, water.
Mm-hmm.
The right hind leg of the calf had been removed, but there was no bone dust found.
Yeah.
So,
Like, that was another thing I
yeah.
remember.
So
Like,
you would have to saw it
right.
because we don't have any equipment that would do anything else. And there was no evidence of that.
And the incisions are usually like really clean. Like
Yeah.
some of them are like cauterized
Hmm.
even.
Hmm. Yep. And this was done through a circular cut that extended up to the midsection. And all of the reproductive organs were removed, but the emptied scrotum was left intact. I know, everything's pulled from the inside. It's insane. When the calf was rolled, one of the internal organs was found under it. One ear was missing and the teats were cut off. And once again, there were no tracks or footprints around this calf.
It's so it now, like, my brain then got like, what are these aliens using this for?
I know it's a delicacy, probably. Good night.
A
I have no
delicacy,
idea.
or they're like using their uteruses to like raise more children.
Oh my gosh, quit. I love your conspiracy theory.
I mean,
I
at this
know, I
point,
know,
it is like all just it, it's all speculation.
I know.
It's so speculative. It's insane.
It is. The same day in Belt, another rancher called in. This time it was a Hereford cow that was locked in a pasture and her calf was missing. No tracks other than that made by the cattle were around the animal. The left ear, tongue, and some of the hide were removed.
If you were a cattle rancher, you would be stressed.
Pissed.
Yeah.
That's money. And this is why, so they do talk about, a lot of sources talk about how there's probably so many cases that have been not like unreported, but because this was getting so prevalent, people started calling it in because they're like, this is my livelihood at this
Right.
point. Like, this is my money going away. Something has to be done to protect my assets.
Yeah.
And nothing was happening.
Yeah. You would be so mad. You would like side eye everyone in your community
Yeah.
and be
Like, are
like,
you
are
the
you
one?
doing this?
You creep.
Yeah.
On September 22nd, 1975, Cascade County Sheriff's Office was called out to a ranch again near Belt, Montana. There were 2 cows that had been mutilated. The first cow had its bag, teats, rectal area, and reproductive organs removed. The cut to get the organs out was done with a serrated edged blade.
Mm.
On October 9th, Under Sheriff Skelton was called out to the death of a bull calf near Utica, Montana. Its testicles and the cords had been removed, and Skelton removed parts for further examination and to submit for toxicology. So they're really trying to figure out
Right. Like
what.
what's happening?
First, how do you put them down so that you
Right.
can do this? And second, yeah, like what's happening? Other than that, the animal was left where it was, and 10 days later, he was called back to the scene, and the calf was covered in a filmy white substance that was on the ground around it. Samples were collected, and it was determined to be petroleum distillate. Petroleum distillate is a liquid used as solvents for items such as rubber.
Oh.
I know, I had never heard that one before.
It's like, is there toxicology reports
They couldn't
from
find
that one?
anything,
Nothing.
nothing. And so at one point they thought that it was potentially like something that would rapidly
Like,
uh
ha- like, uh, like the half-life would be,
yeah,
right.
really short.
Metabolize.
Thank you.
There it was.
We
I
were
know.
both looking at
I
each
know.
other
Like,
like,
come
I know
on.
this word. um or was something that wouldn't show up in the system unless it was specifically checked
Hmm.
for. So they didn't they didn't find anything. On October 16th, another cow death was called in near Belt. The cow was found in a pasture with no tracks again near the cow. This cow had its left jaw skin, the tongue, and right eye removed. The skin area on the jaw was cut with a serrated edge, and there were indications of burns. So, again, like we
Mm-hmm.
had talked about, like the hot cauterizing. Additionally, the eye wasn't removed from the socket, it was through the bone above the eye. So, they like
Whoa.
drilled in and pulled the eye out.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of work.
It feels like it would be a production, like to do this in the middle of the night
And not get caught?
and not be caught.
Yeah.
Like, you would need equipment, you would need some form of light,
Mhm.
like, you would need to have again, the ability to take a cow down.
Mhm.
Like, the idea that you're able to get to and some of these cattle, like, are found in really odd areas that would be like you'd
Mhm.
have to hike into it. Like,
Yeah.
it's not as simple, like, or you take a horse, I guess,
But again, there's
but
no tracks around the animal.
there's nothing that, like, indicates that someone's been there.
Yeah.
It's just
Insane.
it's insane.
It is. In this case, they did think that they found a needle mark above the left upper leg that went into the hide and extended into the flesh of the animal, but there was no drug again that could be identified um, that had been given to the animal. In Teton County, Sheriff Pete Howard, along with adjoining counties' deputies, a veterinarian, and 2 livestock inspectors went out to the site of a Shetland stud. All of its male organs had been removed, and it wasn't done by a sharp instrument. In the horse's throat, 2 puncture wounds and bruising were identified, and this horse was devoid of blood. But again, just like the cows, there was nothing around the animal. So there was no blood, but there was nothing
Right.
on the ground.
Also, you would, again, like, we put IVs in humans, regularly.
Mhm.
And it doesn't bleed if you get it in the right spot, the right time. I imagine cow arteries and veins are much larger, and so it's probably easier to hit a target if you know where you're going for, but there's still blood that, like, could present itself unless you are 100% perfect and never miss, like, an artery or vein. If you're gonna, like, drain these guys, like, if you're gonna be, like, a mortician and, like, drain their
But there's only like 1 or 2 instances where they think that there's actual puncture wounds. The other cases don't really have the puncture wounds, so but how would you open up the animal? 'Cause,
right,
I mean, there's wounds, but how would you open them up without having all that blood spill out
right.
and then get it cleaned up?
And there's no blood internally either,
Yeah,
like, in these creatures. Like, they're clean.
yeah.
They're dry.
hmm In a couple cases, there's a little bit of blood that's still sitting in the heart, but that's usually about it.
It's so it just I'm gonna keep saying it. It's
It's,
so crazy.
I know, that's why we're talking
I
about it.
know, it's
I
so,
was
like,
reading this and was like,
oh my god.
we gotta talk about it. It's weird.
It's so weird.
So after this, a veterinarian was consulted with officers from Teton and Cascade counties. An experiment was done to see if Ketaset could be used to incapacitate the animals, testing it on a crippled steer calf donated by a farmer.
Mhm.
And Ketaset is ketamine for animals, one of the other names for it. Ketamine is a class of drug called dissociative hypnotics, and it works by disrupting the central nervous system, which in turn induces a cataleptic state. It is rapid acting and can cause unconsciousness and muscle relaxation, and the drug is metabolized quickly, and it doesn't show up on standardized drug screening. However, it is possible to test for it, and it can show up in urine for a few days, as well as in hair follicles for up to 10 days. But that's on humans. I
Mhm.
couldn't find animal statistics. Sorry. I don't know.
Probably similar, I would
Yeah.
imagine.
So in the experiment, the calf that weighed 250 pounds was given 5 cc's of Ketaset, but it didn't appear to be affected by the drug, and so after 7.5 minutes, another 10 cc's was administered. The calf went to the ground within 3.5 minutes. At 4 minutes, the calf's heart rate went up. Then the vet inserted a 12-gauge needle into the calf's jugular vein, and he was able to pump blood out. And no, the vet didn't bleed the animal out. No animal cruelty here.
Mhm.
Um, though I don't know for what length of time they kind of watched this happen. But after 12.5 minutes, the calf's heartbeat slowed back down, and in the end, it took 21 minutes for the calf to stand up and 7.5 more minutes for the Ketaset to be out of the calf's system.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking as well, maybe not in the 70s, but, like, you could very easily, or maybe not very easily, but you would be able to know what medications and drugs are, like, not gonna be detectable in a typical toxicology or whatnot, and then
Mhm.
sort of work backwards from there and start to be like, "Okay, who has sold a large quantity of
I
ketamine
was just gonna say,
lately?" Like,
how would you hide that purchase?
right,
Like,
like
I don't know why I suddenly have all this.
right, like, there would be somewhere something that indicates that this, like, large dose of these drugs are being sold somewhere, and I
Yeah.
know that it could be illicit and on the street, but even then, there's the DEA knows rumblings of people who are buying quantities of ketamine that could put cows down
hmm
day after day.
Yeah. So the experiment had law enforcement in agreement that animals could have been incapacitated through the use of drugs, such as ketamine. Still, they're no closer to solving this. I mean, we still aren't. Other theories are sussed out. There were reports of a group that worshipped Isis to be in the area, and here Isis is Egyptian for Mother of Goodness, but also stands for an ancient cult in Rome, believed to have been involved in cattle mutilations.
Interesting.
There was a site near Butte, Montana, that was found to have a rock pit dug out. Around it were two lodgepole pine trees. A stone with Isis favor us was written on it, and a 5-pointed star was on several rocks in the area.
Hmm.
So next came reports of helicopters and UFOs. Some of them matched up with the incoming reports of mutilations. When the crafts were seen, there were red lights and crafts with white wire writing. Some made a whirring noise, while others were reported to as overbearingly loud. Numerous reports were coming out, and in several cases, NORAD confirmed that no Air Force choppers were out and nothing was found on radar.
Hmm.
In a couple of reports, people said that the aircraft hovered and slowly clouds started to surround it. Then, as it lifted higher into the air, it turned white until it was camouflaged by the sky and the clouds.
I believe it.
I know. I know. Listen, the government has come out and said that there are UFOs. Like, come on now.
Oh, 100%.
As this came, after this came reports of creatures. On December 26, 1975, two junior high girls reported that their horses were stirred up, and so they went out to see what was going on. When they got out to the fields, they saw creatures about 7.5 feet tall, and like twice as wide as like a man would be.
Mm-hmm.
That their faces were, quote, dark and awful looking and not like a human's, end quote, which is such a junior high way of
I know.
describing
I
things.
know.
You're like, thanks. Can I
Yeah.
get some
Yeah.
details?
Could you maybe break that down a bit for me?
One girl had a .22 with her and fired a shot in the air. After eliciting no reaction, she fired again, at which point the creatures dropped to the ground and crawled for a while before standing back up. Both girls took polygraphs and passed.
Whoa.
A search yielded no creatures, but there was evidence that trees were broken off, suggesting something big had gone through the area.
Wow.
Which is weird because, I mean, in the woods, like bears and stuff can go through without breaking a bunch of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Usually you smell them, you don't hear them or anything else. So,
Yeah.
well, these creatures can't get through the woods? Come on now.
It's their spacecrafts that like land and
Yeah, maybe.
break the trees.
On April 4th, 1976, a 16-year-old saw a creature about 8 feet tall walking through the pasture behind his house. It stood on its back legs and walked like a human. That his sister also found a track, and they managed to get a plaster cast of it. And then later, his father heard something and found tracks in the snow.
Did you see a picture of
No,
it?
I
I
was just
know.
going to tell you, I really wanted to see a picture of that plaster mold, but I didn't see it anywhere. It's
I'm
like,
gonna
come on.
definitely have to look that up.
Yeah. But the occurrences didn't stop. They merely slowed until around 2019-ish. And then we moved to the Pacific Northwest.
I know.
We have everything.
We do.
In Grant County, Oregon, June 2021 had a heifer acting strange when the animals were being rounded up. The rancher noted it and went to go look at it and found it lying on its right side with the face skinned back, tongue removed, large cut behind the shoulder, and again, no tracks around this animal, no blood, no signs of a struggle really, and no scavenger activity.
Which is just that makes zero sense.
I know. The scavenger activity, animals know when something weird's going on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They always know.
They're so much more in tune with the realities of nature than we are as humans.
There.
Like,
I know. When you see in movies and stuff where you see the animals all running, and I'm like,
uh-oh.
Run.
Yeah.
Go the way that they're going.
Yeah.
They're going that way for a reason.
Yeah.
Go that way.
I always find that movies that include that detail, or like the birds start to get quiet or loud, or you're like, oh, that's a
They know.
nice detail that you
Yes.
added to the movie like that. Yeah.
Because it's real.
Yeah.
3 miles out in the middle of nowhere was where the animal was found and compared to everything else. And so they called the county sheriff, and the county sheriff claimed it was killed by a bear.
Okay.
But no bear or other animals would touch the
Right.
animal.
And it was like precise.
Yes.
And then just left it there.
Yeah, just decided, I'm going to take the internal organs out and I'm going to bounce. Like, what?
Yeah.
What? No, that's not what they
And it
do.
used
That's
like
not how they
one claw.
seamlessly cut
Yeah.
the skin.
Yeah. It's like a surgical bear.
Bears want the cow rugs.
Yeah.
Cow hug rug for their den.
They're getting ready for their hibernation. Oh my God. I mean, you would just be like, you would never vote for that sheriff again.
I know. I'd be so mad. Like, you don't think I would know if a bear did this
You're
to
right.
my...
Like, I've been doing this for my entire life, sir. I grew up on a horse checking on the cattle on my family's farm. I've seen bears kill my cattle before. They don't do this.
This is not what... Yeah, this
Yeah.
is not how they act. This is the weirdest bear I've ever seen.
Yeah. You've lost my vote,
Yeah.
Sheriff Randy, or whatever your name is.
Oh no. August 2020, a heifer was found laying by a water trough. This heifer had their upper lip cut off, tongue gone, intestines were pulled out. And it was found by this. Oh, sorry. And in the same rancher found in the winter of 22, a bull dead less than 100 yards from their house. And again, no tracks near the animal were found, and there was snow on the ground.
Less than 100 yards from their house, too.
Which also, when we talk about this, I don't know why I didn't bring this up earlier. Most farmers and like ranchers have dogs,
Right, right,
like for like flock protection and sometimes hurting them, but most of them will alert somebody if something's going on
right.
outside, especially if there's like a predator in the area. Because again, these cattle are money, and so they do what they can to
Right.
protect their money.
Yeah,
And
they're like,
there's no reports of the dogs freaking out in any of these cases up until now. Like the dogs weren't responding. At
and,
least they have never been reported as such.
and there's snow on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no tracks around this
No
animal.
tracks.
Oh, I gotta see pictures of that one too.
Like I want to see.
It's just like it's one of those things like you have to see it to believe it, and then even when you do see it, you're still like, I don't believe
Yeah,
it.
you're like,
Like,
it's not real. So again, called this into authorities to try and investigate. Next to Grant County, in Wheeler County, there were 5 confirmed mutilations in 2020. One occurred in July with a heifer lying under a juniper tree, and her head was like off the ground. So it was like looked like it was laying, but like with their head still up.
like they had gone like rigor mortis before.
Potentially,
Yeah,
yeah, but gravity should have
like
got that.
yeah,
But yeah, the head was still up, and so the farmer thought originally that it was sick because they're
uh-huh,
like, oh, it's just laying here, but
right,
I mean the head's up, so you wouldn't expect it to be dead.
dead.
And it was only when they like got up right up to it, they're like, oh, shoot, like this animal is not alive, and its tongue was cut out along with the genitals.
Weird.
Yeah. Stephen Allen with the Times Journal picked up the story and found that in March of 2020, Gillum County, Herschel Lantis and his grandson went out hunting, and they had found a bull elk lying on its side with a 2-foot square cut out of it. So now we're adding elk.
Uh-huh.
So we have cows, horse, and elk. And again, weird because it hadn't been scavenged.
Right. It's just there.
It's just there. It's creepy.
So creepy. It's so creepy. It would be so scary to find them.
Yeah, I know, because you're like, oh, what did that?
Yeah.
And now I'm standing on top of it.
Yeah.
Like, I
Like,
don't want to be here.
what's watching me right now?
Which can be frightening in the woods.
Yeah.
Silence can be deafening when you're there. You're like, all right, something make a noise.
Yeah.
I'm going to lose it.
I mean, farmers are just like tough guys and they probably don't even think that way, but
I know.
they're just more like, that's $10,000 laying on the ground right there.
Yeah. Well,
What
these
the
were
hell?
hunters. I mean, they could
Right.
be farmers too. But they were hunting at the time.
Yeah.
On to Umatilla County. So Darwin Hodges so this gentleman in the late 70s had overheard his dad talking about cattle mutilations in the area. I tried to add a Z in there. I don't know why.
I was about to correct you and add that Z for you. I'm glad you figured it out.
And he worked for the Department of Agriculture. And then in 2019, he found his own heifer lying on its side, her lips, tongue, cheeks, and vulva cut off. Dr. Julie Sperry, a veterinarian, was brought in for a necropsy to be done. As the owner lost a young cow, they kind of wanted to know what the hell happened. But no reason for death was able to be determined by the vet.
Like, is there record that people like to eat any of these parts of these cows? Like,
Not that I saw.
it's not like Wagyu and like a special type of, I don't know. It just seems like, what the hell is going on here?
I know. It's weird. Christopher O'Brien has been researching unexplained livestock deaths for over 30 years. He reports that in New Mexico, they had hundreds of cases from 1973 to 1979. And again, like I had said, we had like 10,000 cases all across the US around that time. These again are the reported cases. Like I said before, farmers are
Right.
gonna, and I mean, how weird would it be if they don't want to seem like they're crazy, especially at that time in the 70s. They're not gonna be like, I think that there was an alien that
Mm-hmm.
murdered my cow.
Right.
Like
I actually,
they're very stoic people.
they are. I remember listening to one farmer say that he had it happen to like two cattle before he finally ever reported it. And he didn't want to report it mainly because he thought it was his like neighbor
Hmm.
doing it. And he was like, if I give them the satisfaction of them knowing that like I'm upset about this, then they're gonna just like feel like they beat me.
Yeah.
So he just sort of like let it ride and was
Mhm.
like, whatever. And then when it happened to a third, that's when he was like, what the fuck?
Again, my money.
Yeah,
At some point,
yeah,
someone's got to give.
yeah,
Yeah. In April 1979, the Federal Law Enforcement Assistance Administration, or LEAA, approved a grant for the Office of the District Attorney in New Mexico to actually investigate cattle mutilation. Mutilations. God, why do I keep wanting to change that word? I'm going home. By this point, farmers' estimated losses over 3 years, was over $45,000. And again, this was in the 70s.
yeah,
I can't even imagine what that would be now. Nationally, the losses had reached over 2.5 million.
easily.
Mm-hmm. A 102-page transcript on the subject was completed by Senator Schmidt, presented in part with other subject matter experts at the Albuquerque Conference on Cattle Mutilations, in which these systematic killings were termed Cattlegate.
Yeah.
But again, there were no answers to how it was happening, and still throughout history there have been variances, questions on who and why, but it seems those questions continue decades later.
Why also not any other animals like this?
Well, so I think, and I mean, again, we don't obviously know the answer
Right.
to this. There was one story that one of the indigenous people was talking about that it had started with buffalo, but then
They became sparse.
people decided to eradicate it
Right.
out of anger against the indigenous people to try and cut off their food supply. If you read history,
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Have you ever seen that picture where there's like it shows one guy and he has, I think, like a buffalo head. And then it was like this very historic image. And then they finally showed the entire image and it was like a wall of buffalo skulls that they had put up. And it was literally, they were trying to eradicate buffalo because that's what the indigenous were hunting.
I have not like I can't like
Oh,
actually I can see it. Like
yeah.
I feel like I know the colors used and like the
It's black and white. It's a very sad portrait.
oh, it's like a real photo.
It's a real photo.
Oh
It's
no,
not.
I have not seen
Yeah,
that.
it's hunters that
No.
have taken the photo, and most of the images that you see are like the crop version of like one guy and he's got a buffalo head in his, but then when you
No.
zoom out it looks like an entire wall, like a wall built up of these skulls.
Good God.
And there's historical evidence that literally they were trying to eradicate buffalo, again, like I said, to cut off indigenous peoples from hunting and their lively source so that they could move them.
Oh my God, white people suck.
People suck, like all people suck.
All people suck, yeah.
um
Europeans especially.
so it, yeah, settlers.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
um so I think that the first stories that came out were them killing buffalo, but they would have like these celebrations and do, whatever, with them. And then as time passed, we kind of brought in the domesticated cattle.
Mm-hmm.
And so then now they're similar enough that now they're being taken. They're also, again, like, so they're all going to be in different areas. They're all penned off. They're easy to get to. It's not like you're hunting a wild animal that's going to be a onesie twosie type
Right.
situation. Even, elk herds, I don't think they get super huge. Um, I've seen some decent size, but
Mm-hmm.
nothing like cattle where they're like 3, 4, 500 of them just
Right.
sitting there. And again, we talked about one where an elk was found. So maybe they are, but because they're in the woods, they're not found as often.
Yeah.
Um, and a couple cases, there were horses that were taken down. Again, we don't have that many wild horses here anymore. They're pretty sparse.
Yeah.
And even then, they're wild, so they're going to be not found as often. So I think it's just cattle's the easiest prey and most often to be seen by us to be
To
reported.
be reported.
Hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so funny because it's cyclical on how things are reported too. Like for a while, all these cows were found near water. And
Right.
then after that were all these sightings of potential UFOs. And some people thought it was the military doing it. And I was like, I don't know any military craft that can create its own white cloud to form around it.
I know.
But
It'd
sure,
be incredible.
that would be very incredible
And
and
why have
frightening.
how come we haven't used that technology in other areas where we probably should?
And I feel like I would have known that it was happening if it was while I was in, and then I would have skimmed over it and not said anything.
Yeah, I mean, it would have, yeah, it seems like a really silly use of resources if the US military is using aircraft like that to steal the genitalia of cows, but
Hmm.
not use it in combat.
Hmm.
Like,
I
hmm,
think they were more referring to the ones that got picked up because I talked about they had like clamp marks
right,
on them, picked up and
right.
moved. And I don't think all of those were mutilated because it sounds like sometimes whatever was
Still,
going for them was like coming down
seems
any
like, again,
a
a
weird,
weird
weird use of
weird use of
resources.
resources.
Yeah.
Hey, can we go instead of cattle tipping, let's go throw some cows with this cool
Hmm.
aircraft that we're not going to use
Yeah.
any other time in our history.
Yeah. And there was also reports of like maybe it was youngsters doing things. I'm like, none of us when we were that young were smart enough to drain a cow without having blood, first of all. And where would you put it? Or precisely take out these organs. But they were talking about maybe like if they were driving away on a truck and they had like a plank, like a plywood, like plank behind it, and it was taking away the track marks. I was like, that would still leave, everything would be bent over. And you would be like,
Right.
oh, look, this whole site has been
Yeah.
like cleaned up, essentially. Like,
You would need to go in like with like a branch broom
yeah,
and like broom away anything, any evidence
yeah.
meticulously.
But then that would broom away where the cows had been. Like,
Right.
how do you get that meticulous but still show that the cow walked?
Yeah.
Their tracks have to go somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just very nobody can explain things that actually would make sense.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, oh, what did happen? We don't know. We don't know. We still don't know. And it's still happening.
It's still
And
happening.
we don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here in the Pacific Northwest, man,
I know.
we picked it up.
It's because we're near the ocean.
Hmm. There you
We
go.
have cattle ranches near the ocean, and so they live in the ocean. Like, come in.
Umatilla not near the ocean, though.
I mean, we're close enough. The
It's fine. It's fine.
the crafts are like, able to move quickly in
Yeah,
and out.
most likely.
I
But
mean,
really, there's no logical explanation for
no.
um, humans being able to create this phenomena. And there's also like no good reason that they would take just internal organs and, like skin off the
Right.
face and the ears and the eyes.
Right.
And so you're like, it has to be for some reason though, because it's this same stuff over and
And
over again.
also like one of the most recent ones where they did like use a Geiger counter, like the level of radiation was actually so high that they didn't even want to go to that site anymore without having like the proper like PPE.
Yeah.
They were concerned that
They're
they
in
were,
hazmat suits.
yeah, they
Yeah.
were worried that they were going to get contaminated,
Yeah.
and
Which
that
explains why animals won't touch
won't
them.
go near there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would cause that? Like, what
Yeah.
is it? Like
But in human UFO sightings, there have been several that have been, when they've tested them at the hospital, the humans have been radiated.
radioactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it just lends credence to that,
Yeah. I'm
potentially.
I mean, that's, that's how their aircrafts fly, they say. It's like nuclear fusion, and
Yeah.
like it would all of the things that you're told in like sci-fi stories make sense to like warrant something is going on here that's beyond our like normal
Understanding.
weird serial killer dude who thinks it's fun to do this, or like some weird cult who
Yeah.
wants these organs for their rituals.
Yeah. But even then, I feel like they would use different things from the cow too, not just those little pieces.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
they're
when it
which,
comes to like people who are like worshiping this ISIS lady, like who knows? Like they might just be weird. Maybe
yeah.
that's part of the religious practice is you only take the right eye and a jaw, bone, flesh, and like,
And this,
and you leave everything else behind.
yeah, you pull the rectum out, but you
Yeah.
leave it.
And you x-ray them, and so they're all radiated, and you like meticulously wipe the ground around it like within centimeters of the hoofs, and like, it's probably written in that doctrine somewhere for them.
And
But
don't scare the dogs, darn it.
and you can't scare the
Yeah.
dogs,
If they know,
but you need to scare the cattle
you do. You need
to
to,
not come near it.
and you need to look like a 7 foot tall creature
Yeah.
that walks like a human, that sounds like a Sasquatch.
That does not look human-like.
Does not look like a human though. Oh gosh. Yeah. I just wanted to bring this because I thought it was
Oh,
super interesting and I kept reading about these cattle mutilations. God, I'm never gonna say that word right. It's fine. It's fine.
we're gonna get
Um,
everyone saying it that way.
I know. Sorry, I like to add a Z apparently. Um, but I thought I had to bring this up. I thought it would be fun to talk about.
It's so fascinating.
It
I
is.
love the unexplained. I mean, and it's up the alley of like
It's
a
funny
lot.
because I hate the I want to know
Right.
what
I
happened
mean, I
and
think
why.
that's why I love it, is because it makes me so angry that I don't understand it. So I'm like fascinated by that actual like visceral feeling I get when I hear stories like this.
Yeah.
Like, I really do want to know the answer. I used to tell my dad that if the world was ending, like I knew it was all going to be blowing up, I would get down to Area 51 and just make a run for it to see what I could find in
I don't think Area 51 is as exciting as everybody really thinks it
it.
is.
I don't think so either, but they're very protective of it.
I know.
So it
That's the
makes you
one thing
curious.
I'm sad about when I was in the military. Wish I would have gone there. But there's other places that we civilians can't go, and it's actually more because we house weapons in certain areas,
Right.
which makes me feel like Area 51 is just housing weapons that they're like, no, you cannot come here
Yeah.
and
I
see
mean,
what we have.
it's a great place to have built like the next nuclear bomb. Like, why
Those
isn't like,
most military areas, unless I feel like on the East Coast, there's a couple exceptions where they got put into actually nice areas. When most bases started, it was like unwanted areas. If you look at
right.
Texas, nobody wanted where the biggest base there is in Texas. Nobody wanted that land. They're like,
Yeah.
ew, this is dry, barren, terrible.
Yeah.
We don't want this. There's a training site in California that is horrible. I hated going there. I only had to go there once and like this is the worst. And then they had it's like a desert area and they managed to have rain, of course, when I go there
Oh
and
man.
had all these flash floods because the area never
Right.
gets rain. I'm like, this is why nobody wants to be here.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be here because this is horrible.
Because you need water, and then when you
Yeah.
get water, it takes everything. You
Yeah.
can't go anywhere.
Yeah. I
You're
think
stuck.
when Fort Lewis was first built, I think it was mostly woods. I don't think there was a whole lot around it.
Yeah.
Like, but that's now it feels like one of the exceptions because all these big areas are around it that are nicer, but it wasn't when it first started.
Right.
It was oh, here's some land nobody wants. You can have it.
Yeah,
And that's how we get our bases. So that's Area 51's in an area where like
for sure.
we don't want anything. You can
You
have
can,
this.
yeah, yeah.
Nobody can live here.
I
We're
mean, it would not shock me at all if there was like a second Oppenheimer project,
yeah.
like Oppenheim,
I think it's open, right?
I don't know if there's an
I
R or
now can't think of it. Way to
I know.
go.
Um, anyway, I want to be shocked if there's another bomb sitting out there somewhere, and that's why they have layers and layers of protection and say they'll shoot you if you cross the fence. Which it would make sense to me, but
I mean, to be fair, they can shoot you if you go across any of the
yeah,
fences and any of the bases.
that's probably true. It's probably true.
They're all armed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, fair. They just make it sound way scarier.
Of course they do. It's been sensationalized. I
Yeah.
get it.
But
That's fine.
even like recently in Oregon, the helicopter pilot, please tell me you heard about this.
Which one?
Like a month ago or so in Oregon, there was this helicopter, a medevac pilot, who was flying from like Lincoln City south,
Hmm.
and he was flying the coastline. He was about like
That
2,000,
saw a UFO. Yeah.
and he said he like
It
kept
was on.
seeing.
Was it on radar that it pinged?
No, so it was on his internal radar that it started to like register there was a craft off to the right over the ocean, and it
Hmm.
would like come in and then it would like shoot back out.
Hmm.
And it kept doing that and getting closer and like going back out. So he radioed to the traffic control and they're like, "We don't have anything on our radar.
Yeah.
You're not seeing anything." He's like, "I'm picking it up on my radar.
Hmm.
How are you not getting it?"
Yeah.
And they were like, "We don't have anything. Can you get a video of it?" And he's like, "We're trying. We're working on it." But it moves fast. He's like, "We're trying." And then the traffic control was like, "Well, according to what I see, you can move left or right freely as you need to because I don't see anything on your radar."
Yeah.
That very night, two other pilots that are commercial planes are like
Yeah.
20,000 feet above him, also reporting that they're seeing crap.
Yeah.
Like
We talked about this already. We talked about
crazy.
this when we talked about the Michigan episode with the
Mm,
UFOs
yeah,
above the water.
yeah,
Same situation
yeah.
where it either was seen on radar and not by people, or it wasn't seen on radar, but people in the air are seeing it.
It and yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Moral of the story:
We're not
aliens
alone.
aliens apparently want cows, and we still don't know why, but they like the reproductive organs,
They're
tongues,
growing their
and eyes.
babies.
Ew, but why the tongues and eyes then? See? Flaws in your logic. Well, if you guys hung into the end, thank you. To all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.